are live. If you're ready.
Call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on October 25th, 2021 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Knox, seconded by Councillor Meyer. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have no delegations this evening. We have a couple of public hearings, so we're going to open the public hearing for variation PC 5621. This is for Nicholson at 21 Melco Drive. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Your name, sir, you may take the podium. And if you could just state your name for the record, please.
Matt Nicholson.
Go ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
The whole reasoning behind our request for the variance is just in regards to the second, more so the second apartment building complex that's under construction right now, and just the close proximity to our property, I guess. With my particular job, I'm fairly well in doubt of high traffic areas and the problems that could surround that. Biggest thing for me is feeling safe in my own backyard. I have two small young kids that like to run around and stuff like that, so I would just like that little extra sense of security. I've seen the minutes just tonight in regards to the objection and stuff like that, in regards to the trees that are up there right now, that they provide privacy and whatnot. And I looked at the pictures. Unfortunately, the pictures were taken a little bit a time ago when the leaves were still on the trees. Currently, there's next to nothing for leaves on those particular trees, so you see there's no sight line at all, like you see right through and into our backyard. So yeah, we're just looking for to have a slightly higher fence than the norm. We do have the future intention of putting in a pool as well. I think that was noted on the application. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's any questions or clarification that you might need.
Were there any questions from council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present to speak to variation PC 5621?
If I could, Mr. Mayor and Councilors, I'm Lou Antonison, and I represent the Flats Apartment Site Group. We're opposing the variation request for the portion of the fence adjoining our mutual property line, as the additional height applied for is both unnecessary and extremely unsightly. Specifically, fences in the area are between 2 and 2.3 meters in height, which is 6.5 to 7.5 feet. Secondly, the applicant's side fences are already constructed, and they are 2 meters in height. Thirdly, if the applicant's concern is privacy, the applied for fence height will not accomplish that. While it may block 1 or 2 balcony views on the ground floor of the 4-story apartment to the east of them, the apartment block is actually 4 stories tall, and the taller fence will not block out those suites. To that point, the applicant's yard has 9 mature trees along the fence line, which are 50 feet in height, and they're approximately 10 feet apart and 10 feet within their property. From our perspective, we see the bad side of the fence. The proposed 9-foot fence is extremely unsightly. The applicants will be shielded from the negative appearance because of their yard. Our property will not be. There will be undoubtedly other fences being built along that westerly portion, because the apartment block, of course, is more than 1 lot long. And most of those people, if not ourselves, will be limiting our fences to 2 to 2.3 meters. And if the applicant's concerns for a future pool, the pool bylaws are for a minimum of 1.8 meters and a maximum of 2.4. And their side yards, as stated before, are 2.0 meters in height. And lastly, the fence is already partially built by the applicants. We conducted a survey, our survey crew came out last week and raised concerns that their partially completed fence is actually over the property line. So I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions from council?
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else to speak to the hearing for variation PC 5621? Okay, we have a letter to read into the record, please.
Did you want it read out, or have you pretty much covered it? You sure?
Just had a question for maybe Mr. Brooks from planning on the fence on the property line. So could we get clarification on that?
Sorry, what was the question then?
Just clarification on the fence. Is it already partly constructed? Is it on different property?
The posts are in place, and I was over there one day last week, and there's a pin on the northeast corner of the property line, and the fence post on that corner is definitely on the property to the east, on the Flats property.
Okay. So can we consider to approve or not approve a fence that's not built on the proponent's land?
The question is the height of it only, not where it is really. It's not up to you guys to decide where it is. It's up to the property owner to ensure it's on his property. And if it isn't, then they should be sharing the cost, If it's up to the owner to make sure it's on their property, and if they were sharing the cost of the fence with a neighbor, then they could split the cost and have it on the center line of the property line. But really, the issue is the height of the fence is what the council should be looking at tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brooks. Okay, need a motion to close the public hearing?
Thank you, Your Worship. Be it resolved, and I so move that the public hearing for variation PC 5621 for Nicholson at 21 Melco Drive now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, Council, I'm just going to take this off just for this report. As you've seen in front of you from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, a request for variation for a Matthew and Erica Nicholson, Melco Developments Limited. So the issue is to vary the following: the north side of the rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.438 meters, and the east side of the rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.743 meters. There are two sketches there, sketch 1 and sketch 2, that kind of give you a detailed picture of the request. As always, we can approve the variation or we can deny the variation application. Some of the background, as you've heard from the applicant, is that Matthew and Erica Nicholson are applying for a variation order to allow the following. As I previously mentioned, the north side of the rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.438 meters, and the east side of the rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.743 meters. The applicants do have future plans to install a pool in the rear yard, but are building a fence now with the future pool in mind. This property is to the west of a 4-story apartment block that is under construction and to the south of a Cole Arthemian school. The applicants indicate they would like some privacy in their rear yard. As per the current City of Portage la Prairie zoning bylaw, which is number 10-8492, if they were installing a pool at this point, they would be allowed to have a maximum height fence of 2.4 meters and obviously wouldn't have to apply for variation. If council feels that the 2.743 meters high fence along the east rear yard is too high, the applicant would like to have the fence match the north fence at 2.438 meters. Council recently approved a backyard fence height of 2.45 meters. The reference minutes are there for your reference, which are PC 41-21. Now, this property is a new house, and the finished grades have been met as per City of Portage la Prairie building bylaw. It's also important to note that the approved finished lot grades are to be maintained by the property owner. So this building is in an R1, or a residential single-family zone. The application has been circulated to the various city departments, and there have been no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius, and there's been the one objection that's been filed tonight. So, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the council of the city of the Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Matthew and Erica Nicholson to vary the following. The north side of rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.438 meters, and the east side of the rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.743 meters. At the property known as 21 Melco Drive, which is legally described as Lot 1, Block 2, Plan 55015, in the parish of Portage la Prairie, with the condition that the approved finished lot grading is maintained by the property owner.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? And Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. Even though, of course, I made the motion, I am one that would not support it in its current form. Again, I don't understand a lot about meters, but it is, when I put it into feet, it puts it into perspective for me. And we're talking really about a 9-foot high fence at this point in time. City has never approved that before. Our heights at the maximum that we've approved is 2.45 meters. If he was building, if the applicant, was putting a pool in and applying for that, he would just be able to build that at any time without a variance. So my request would be at this point in time, and I trust I do this now, Your Worship, is that I would like to make an amendment to the administrative recommendation. And I would like that section B, the east side of the rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.438 meters, which is still within the 2.45 meters that's allowable. Is that how I word that? As a friendly amendment?
Mr. Vito?
Through Councillor Meyer, to Your Worship, so you're suggesting to amend the resolution to basically link up the two heights of the fences. So you're absolutely in your right to do that, but you will need a seconder, correct?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Wall. We just have the amended motion read out.
Okay. So section B, I believe you changed it to the east side of the rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.438 meters?
Correct.
And everything else is the same?
Correct. And if I can just speak to that amendment real quick. Thank you, Your Worship. My, of course, rationale behind that is that a lot of times our decisions are made on precedent, and sometimes we'll make the decision to move forward on a different request based on what some of our previous acceptance were. So again, to go anything higher than what we currently had, I wouldn't be prepared to do that. That's why I'd be prepared to vote in favor of the amended motion before we actually deal with the motion itself. And that's it, Your Worship.
You have a comment, Mr.
No, Worship, but we just have to vote on the amendment first before we can vote on the motion.
Just one question for Councillor Meyer or maybe Mr. Brooks. So this new height, does that meet the requirements if the owner was to install a pool? He would have a high enough fence to accommodate the pool?
Yes, it would. The bylaw actually says pool maximum pool height is 2.4. This is 2.438. It's not a lot difference, but yes, it would satisfy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions have been called. Any further questions or comments on the amended motion? All those in favor of the amended motion? And that's carried.
So just for clarification, Your Worship, so now we voted on the amendment. Now the motion is amended, so we have to vote on the motion now that it's been amended.
Can we reread that motion, Your Worship?
That the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Matthew and Erica Nicholson to vary the following. A, north side of rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.438 meters. And B, the east side of rear yard fence height requirement of 2 meters to be increased to 2.438 meters at the property known as 21 Melco Drive, which is legally described as Lot 1, Block 2, Plan 55015, Parish of Portage la Prairie, with the condition that the approved finished lot grading is maintained by the property owner.
All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for variation PC 5721. This is for Taylor at 19 Fifth Street Northwest. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Your name, sir, for the record? Bryce Taylor. Bryce, go ahead and take the podium.
Yeah, the variance as issued or presented is fine. Just I'm here for any clarification as you need.
Are there any questions from council for Mr. Taylor? Okay, thank you, sir. And once again, variation PC 5721 for Taylor at 19 Fifth Street Northwest. Any other person here to speak to the hearing? Okay, need a motion to close the public hearing?
Be it resolved, and I so move, that the public hearing for variation PC 57-21 for Taylor at 19 Fifth Street Northwest now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Okay, council, once again in front of you from the Planning and Economic Development Committee, there's a request for variation for a Bryce Taylor. The issue is to vary the following: that the parking requirement of 17 stalls to be reduced to 7 stalls, that the dwelling unit area requirement of 37.2 square meters to be reduced to 36 square meters in 3 units, and that the front yard requirement of 6 meters to be reduced down to 4.27 meters. The rationale behind it in the background is that Bryce Taylor is applying for a variation order to allow the following. As I just indicated, the owner would like to convert the existing 6 dwelling units with 1, 2, and 3 bedroom suites to 11 one-bedroom dwelling units, as well as install posts below existing the front door area. Sketch 1 and Sketch 2 will give you an idea of the area, of course, where it's at, and Sketch 1, I should say, and Sketch 2 gives you exactly how the parking stalls would be behind the building. The building is in an R3 residential multiple family zone. The application has been circulated to the various city departments. There have been no concerns. The public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius, and as you see, there's been no objections. So it's administrative recommendation, and I so move, that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Bryce Taylor to vary the following: that the parking requirement of 17 stalls to be reduced to 7 stalls, that the dwelling unit area requirement of 37.2 square meters to be reduced to 36 square meters in 3 units, and the front yard requirements of 6 meters to be reduced to 4.27 meters. That the property known as 19 Fifth Street Northwest, which is legally described as lots 45, 46, Plan 17 in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Draycott and then Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Worship. I do have some hesitation on this simply because we're asking to remove parking stalls for the number of dwellings that are going to exist. So if we're going from a 6 dwelling unit to an 11 dwelling unit, but we don't have 11 parking stalls, my brain wonders where those 4 other potential tenants are going to park. Most likely they're going to move to the street or not have a vehicle, but that most likely wouldn't be the case, or hard for us to make that decision. So my concern is, where do 4 potential tenants park? And I can't see an alternative in the sketches provided. So, but I do have some hesitancy to remove 4 parking stalls from an apartment complex.
So, Mr. Pito, you had a little information on that.
Sure. Perhaps it would be best if Mr. Taylor could maybe speak to his request and maybe the people he's targeting with these apartments, that he could answer those questions.
Yeah, so my thought behind it is currently as 2 and 3, I would like to propose these smaller suites to more professionals to provide quality homes or quality units for rent. Currently I have quite a number of 2 and 3 bedroom units for rent, and there's a lack of quality one-bedroom rentals out there, and I do turn quite a few people away. This was the target with this. I just this month I turned away a nice older lady who was looking for a single one-bedroom apartment, and there just isn't very many good ones in town. So that is the intent with this building, is I'm going to be just single people that are looking for a nice, clean unit to rent.
Mm. Could you comment on the parking situation, how you anticipate that rolling out?
So directly in front of the lot, there are 2 to 3 street parking spots as well. Just south of the property is the Tim Hortons. Not to use their lot, but again, street parking along that between the stop sign and my lot. Again, there's about 4 spots available for street parking there as well. And then across the street, there's the I think it's the MIG Insurance or MIG or Hub. I can't remember which one, but again, there's about 4 stalls of parking along the street as well there.
Councillor Draycott, did you have any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Councillor Knox?
Yeah, I would just wanted to mostly comment on that. I'm in favor of this motion because I do believe that this change in this building is something that we need in this community when it comes to one-bedroom accommodations. I hear it on a daily of that's something that's needed. So I commend this person for moving forward with this. And I know people around the area will be happy to see the improvements.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Draycott's original question. So the Director of Public Safety spoke to Mr. Taylor and looked at the parking requirements. There was the thought that a lot of these units, perhaps some of these units wouldn't need parking, but also when they reviewed street-based parking, it seemed reasonable that it could accommodate what's being asked.
Further questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't really have any concerns, other than if the back alleys are not cleared, obviously from a city perspective. And I do see where 2 of the parking spots would directly come off that one back alley. What's your guarantee or process for snow removal to have access to those parking spots? I get the 7, I just don't want it to be reduced to 5.
Yeah, so I will have
Okay.
professional landscaping and yard care for that facility. That includes the parking lot, and it would be access to the parking lot. So if I needed to, I would clean the back alley myself.
I'm happy with that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any further questions or comments on the motion? Thanks again, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. That concludes our public hearings for this evening, so we're going to move right into committee. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Tonight, Councillor Knox for Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tonight we are looking at updating our debenture policy, something we reviewed at our last committee meeting. As we know, the Finance Department has reviewed and updated its policy. The current policy was approved in 2001 and requires changes to reflect processes required by our provincial government department and the Municipal Board for Debenture Insurance. So as we reviewed, and I recommend that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the updated debenture policy.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And that concludes your work for finance?
That concludes my finance work for this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning Economic Development Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Waterworks Committee has no report this evening.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee tonight for Councillor Espy, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Transportation Committee has no business on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from public safety in this portion of the meeting.
Thank you. We have no deferred business this evening. We have a number of items of new business. The first item is downtown parking permit program. This is for information, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. In front of us, we have information on our parking permits in our downtown parking lot. As we know, we commenced phase 2 of the downtown strategy last year, and we offer monthly as well as daily and annual parking passes to a number of lots. So far, we have sold 1,277 parking passes. So I think it can be deemed a success so far, and that people who I've spoken to are enjoying being able to park there and know that they have a spot. So that concludes my information on parking permits.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. Next item of new business is the first reading of amending bylaw 218727. This is for the Crescent Lake Causeway, and this again is Finance Committee. Councillor Knox.
Your Worship, we just have to move back one in the agenda there.
Sorry. New business 2021 third quarter financial statements and projected year-end balances. Finance Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have in front of me the quarter 3 financial statements and projected year-end balances. As we've seen and we heard from Councillor Buds previously, we do have some projections. The general fund is projected to end the year with $448,000 more net revenue than budgeted. And there's a number of reasons, as we've seen in this report, as well as our utility fund is projected to be $618,000 better results compared to the budget to end the year. And a number of reasons for that, including for $489,000 where we got from more high customer revenue, as well as things like reduced expenditures due to lower taxes for water treatment plant than anticipated. Many reasons there. So far a good year. So it's my recommendation, or not my recommendation, it's administration's recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the 2021 quarter 3 financial statements.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Now we're going to moving to the first reading of amending bylaw 21-8727. This is for the Crescent Lake Causeway, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're looking to obtain approval for amending bylaw 21-8727, a bylaw to authorize the boring for Crescent Lake Causeway project. So the City of Portage la Prairie commenced the Crescent Lake Causeway project in 2019, a combination of federal gas tax reserve funds, additional contributions made to the city throughout the course of the project, and up to $3.3 million in municipal borrowing was approved to fund this project. This project is expected to be substantially completed in 2021. While this project was delayed in its completion, the benefit was total project costs of $8.87 million were primarily funded by the federal gas tax funds due to a longer project completion period and further federal contributions, leaving the city with only $1 million of the $3.3 million to fund through municipal borrowing. A bid process was completed in 2021 to procure the lowest pricing for municipal borrowing for this project. Amending bylaw 21-8727 authorizes the award of this borrowing to the city's financial institution, Stride Credit Union, at the rate of 1.95%. Payments will be made over the next 2 years from our federal gas tax contributions.
Moved by Go ahead.
So bylaw number 21-8727 be an amending bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie to procure $1 million in municipal borrowing for the Crescent Lake Causeway project to be given first reading.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Thank you, Your Worship, and now we'll wait for municipal approval for next steps.
Okay, thank you. The next item of new business is the first reading for amending bylaw 21-8728. This is phase 1 of Saskatchewan Avenue West, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our new exciting Saskatchewan West project we're talking about. So the City of Portage commenced phase 1 of Saskatchewan Avenue West in 2021. Phase 1 will replace and upgrade the utility infrastructure between 4th Street and Elm Street West. This project is funded under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program through a combination of the federal, provincial governments and up to $6 million in municipal borrowing by the city. The cost of the 2021 work on phase 1 is projected at $2.1 million. A bid process was completed in 2021 to procure the best, lowest pricing for municipal borrowing for this project. Amending bylaw 21-8728 authorizes the award of this borrowing to the city's financial institution Stride Credit Union at a rate of 2.60%. This is the beginning of several municipal borrowing amounts by the city over the next 4 years of this project's completion. In total, payments will be made over 15 years and will be primarily funded by retiring Stride Place debt payments. Phase 1 of the Saskatchewan Avenue project is expected to be completed in 2022, and Phase 2 of this project, which includes new land drainage systems, updating the paved avenue, installing climate-friendly infrastructure, including paths and greenery, sidewalks, and appropriate parking spaces, will begin in 2022. So the recommendation that bylaw number 21-8728 be an amending bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie to procure $2.1 million in municipal borrowing for phase 1 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project be given first reading.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business is the award tender for provision of HVAC services. And this is Finance Committee again. Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. In front of us, we're looking at awarding our provision of electrical services, which is something that we do on a 3-year basis. We've had 2 electrical companies bid on this. They have a lot of work that they do throughout the city. There was also tenders sent to other organizations such as Winnipeg Construction and Construction Association of Rural Manitoba, but we did only receive 2 from rural companies. So it is the administrative recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the contract for electrical services to V&R Electrical for a 3-year period ending November 30th, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And Your Worship, possibly my mistake that I skipped right to electrical, but
I thought you were
I
just
I know
excited about the
plumbing is
electrical.
important. so
HVAC is very important.
that's
Let's look at the award tender for the provisions of HVAC services now.
we
This is Finance Committee.
We sure will. Okay. So now we're going to look at our provisions for plumbing services from
HVAC.
Sorry. Wow. Okay. HVAC. Perfect. So we're looking at the tender for the provision of HVAC maintenance services, again, a 3-year contract from December 1st to November 30th. Locations that we do this in are City Hall, RCMP, library, operations, etc., throughout our whole city. We had one person bid on this contract, and they have been doing this service for us already, and we're pleased with what they do. So the administrative recommendation is that the City Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the contract for HVAC maintenance services to Cobb's Plumbing and Heating for a 3-year period ending November 30th, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on this motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, our next item of new business is the award tender for the provision of electrical services. And this
Oh,
is
sorry,
finance.
plumbing.
Sorry.
Plumbing.
Plumbing. Maybe it's contagious. Okay, let's give that another try. New business award tender for the provision of plumbing services. And of course, this is Finance Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Worship. My apologies for the confusion. So tonight we're looking at the tender for our plumbing services from December 1st, 2021 until November 30th, 2024. It is the administrative recommendation that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the contract for plumbing services to Cobb's Plumbing and Heating for a 3-year period ending November 30th, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Our next item of new business, I think, is the first reading of the Maintenance and Occupancy Bylaw, which is 21-8723. And this is Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Worship. So we're talking about our maintenance and occupancy bylaw tonight. Administration has completed a comprehensive review of the current maintenance and occupancy bylaw. With many changes being made, the old version will be repealed and a new bylaw passed. Along with basic wording amendments and updates, the main changes being proposed are as follows. All appeals for non-conformance orders will now be heard by the city manager instead of the previous tribunal being City Council. A separate clause has been added with respect to long grass and weeds. Instead of the previous provision of 14 days to comply and an option to appeal, there is now only 7 days to comply and no option to appeal. So the administrative recommendation is that bylaw number 21-8723, being the maintenance and occupancy bylaw for the City of Portage la Prairie, be now given first reading.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Worship. And just one quick question. First of all, I support the change in its form, present form. Just what happens between November the 8th and December the 13th? Between the time, if council approves it tonight, the first reading, and before it comes back for your second and third reading? Is it advertised somewhere? Does it go to the province? What's the process?
Through your worship to Councillor Meyer, this is a city bylaw, does not need provincial approval, so essentially we do our first reading. We hope the word gets out. I'm sure we could share more information on social media, and of course our media partners are here as well. And then the second and third reading will have a December 13th. After that, it's reasonable for administration to try and communicate those changes as widely as we can, and that would be our procedure.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. That concludes our new business for this evening. We'll move into old business. First on new old business is bylaw 21-8725, and this is to rescind the debt-free bylaw 98-7998. And this is second and third readings, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. We've seen this in front of us because we've already had first reading, so we're doing our second and third reading. Just as a reminder that the city implemented a debt-free bylaw in 1998 to discontinue long-term borrowing, and now we know that while appropriate for that time, With the recent economic growth in our city, we need to keep pace with that growth, in replacing and renewing our infrastructure is vital, and a debt is an effective tool to do so. So it is the recommendation that bylaw number 21-8725, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie, to rescind debt-free bylaw 98-7998 to be given second reading.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that bylaw number 21-8725 be given third and final reading, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And that concludes our old business. So council is adjourned at 6:40 p.m. and we're going to move right into committee. Committee is open to the public and the media. And we'll call committee to order at 6:41 p.m. And first up is the Finance Committee and Councillor Knox for Councillor Buds this evening.
Thank you, Worship. In front of us, we have information on our 2022 fees and charges that will come to council. The administration has completed their annual break-even and competitive review analysis of the fees and charges. Some of the changes and new services are downtown on-street parking permits. They've been looking to implement those for on-street parking for contractors, etc., when they're working on our downtown streets. Memorial benches, fees for memorial benches have been increased to include 10 years of maintenance of the benches, which we know we need longevity on these things. Commissioner of Oaths, the city provides Commissioner of Oath services to city residents at its city hall for qualified documents, and fees of those services will reflect the cost to provide those services. Tax statements for real estate agents. This service was introduced several years ago without a fee. And house numbers. It's important for emergency services that your residence has a house number. Our services want to respond to an emergency call to your residence as quickly as possible, and having a house number visibly affixed to your residence greatly assists our services in doing so. So you will see those at next council meeting for approval. And then next on my report is our list of our 2022 council meeting dates that we approve, and that we also put them on our city website for citizens to know when they can tune into our meetings and attend when necessary. And that so ends my finance report for committee, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Oh, sorry, a question.
Thank you, Your
Councillor Draycott.
Worship. I was wondering if we could have some clarification as to what the construction parking on street permit would actually be for, what that type of project looks like, just so the public can be aware that that is a new fee and what they might need that for.
Through your worship to Councillor Draycott, this comes up probably 2-3 times a year where we'll have somebody possibly moving inventory into their store or doing a renovation in the downtown area, need a dumpster located on Saskatchewan Avenue. They would have to come in and apply for that permit to have that space paid for that period of time and tell us how long they need it. It happens fairly rarely, but enough that we probably should have a system in place for them to book it and pay for it.
Any further questions for Councillor Knox? Okay. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. City Planning Economic Development Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Community Services Committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have no report from the Waterworks Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Worship. Transportation Committee has nothing on the committee tonight.
And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from your Public Safety Committee this evening.
Thank you. So committee is adjourned at 6:44 p.m. and we're going to move right into our organizational meeting. Call our organizational meeting to order at 6:45 p.m. The first and only order of business is the appointments to council committees, and this is Finance Chair, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have our organizational meeting tonight to talk about committees. A few things of note. You'll see many things listed in your report in front of you. One to mention is our youth member of council, Jessica Ramachandran, is here for the next year, so welcome. Committees that I'll let you know about is Finance Committee continues to be Councillor Buds and Councillor Espy. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer, Councillor Buds. Community Services, Councillor Draycott and myself. Waterworks, Councillor Wall and Councillor Draycott. Transportation, Councillor Espy, Councillor Meyer. Public Safety, myself and Councillor Wall. Our special committees, to make note of, our Budget Committee continues to be all of Mayor and Council. City Manager's Evaluation, Mayor and Council. Emergency Control Group, Mayor and Council. Board of Revision is Councillor Espy, Councillor Meyer, and Councillor Wall. The chair of that board is Councillor Meyer. Ad hoc committees, Chamber of Commerce and Positively Portage Observer is Councillor Meyer. The Portage Regional Recreation Authority is Mayor Ferris, Councillor Buds, Councillor Espy. Citizen Appointment James Bolton. Portage Regional Economic Development consists of Councillor Buds, Councillor Draycott, and Councillor Meyer. Heartland Community Futures, Councillor Meyer. The Regional Library Board is myself, Citizens Joe Massey and Lita Maximic. The Portage and District Hospital Foundation, Mayor Ferris, Lynn Bariza, and Dale Lyle. The Queen Elizabeth Scholarship, Mayor Ferris, the PCI Principal, and the West Park School Principal. Heritage Advisory Committee, Councillor Wall, James Kostachuk, Brian Barrett, Greg Roberts, and Madison Connolly. The RCMP Community Consultative Committee, Councillor Knox and Councillor Wall. The Planning District Board, Mayor Ferris, Councillor Buds, and Councillor Espy. Regional Landfill, Councillor Wall, myself, and Councillor Meyer. The Dangerous Animal Hearing Committee is the Fire Chief, the City Manager, and a veterinarian to be consulted if required. Fort Lorraine Museum is Councillor Draycott. Public Art Committee, Councillor Meyer, Stephanie Dunn, Roberta Christensen, Victoria Espy, and Cindy McDonald. And the Parks Committee consists of Councillor Draycott, Councillor Espy, Gord Zacharias, Steve Hildebrand, Diane Stasiak, Angie Schindel, Lori Wood, Jody Patterson, Paige Fretz, and Rachel Templeton. The Portage Urban Indigenous Peoples Coalition members are Councillor Knox and Councillor Meyer, as well as Nathan Pito, Victoria Espy, Eve O'Leary, Cornell Pache, and representatives from the RCMP, the Portage Friendship Center, Red River College, Portage School Division, Southern Health, the Manitoba Métis Federation, Indigenous Youth, and 4 members at large. So it is administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the committee appointments as listed in the report presented.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Wall. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. So our organizational meeting is adjourned at 6:49 PM. Thank you for coming out, everybody.